There is a kind of walking that asks for nothing, that has no destination worth hurrying toward. And on soft, rainy evenings, Sophia had learned to love exactly that kind of walking best. She stepped out of her building just as the street lights were beginning to flicker on, one by one, up and down the block, their glow still pale against the last grey light of the evening sky. The rain had started an hour earlier, gentle and steady, the kind that seemed to have no interest in stopping anytime soon, and rather than wait it out behind her window, Sophia had pulled on her coat, tucked her hands into her pockets, and simply gone out to meet it, the way she nearly always did when the rain arrived in exactly this unhurried, patient mood. The day had been a full one, full in the ordinary way most days were, meetings that ran slightly long, small errands squeezed between them, a dozen minor decisions that asked for her attention and then, just as quickly, let it go again. None of it had been difficult exactly, only occupying, the kind of day that filled every hour without leaving much room to simply sit and think. By the time she reached her own front door that evening, she had felt not tired so much as crowded, her thoughts still faintly buzzing with the day's small demands, the way a room feels crowded even after the last guest has gone, simply from the lingering echo of so much talk. She lived alone in a small flat above a shuttered flower shop, and most evenings, after a long day of work, she found herself craving exactly this, an hour of quiet movement through streets that asked nothing of her, where no one needed her attention, her opinion, her energy. It was not loneliness she felt on these walks, it was something closer to relief, the particular lightness of being, for a little while, answerable to no one at all, free to move at whatever pace she liked, to stop wherever something caught her eye, to keep walking simply because the rain still felt good against her hood and there was, as yet, no real reason to stop. The street outside her building ran gently downhill, lined with old plane trees whose broad leaves bent and dripped steadily under the weight of the rain. Sophia walked without an umbrella, the hood of her coat pulled up loosely, not tight enough to block the sound of the rain, only enough to keep the worst of it off her face. She liked hearing it clearly, the soft patter against her hood, the deeper drumming against parked car roofs, the steady trickle of water finding its way along the curb towards some drain further down the hill. Her footsteps fell into an easy rhythm, unhurried, matching the slow tempo of the evening around her. Puddles had already begun to form in the uneven parts of the pavement, each one holding a small, wobbling reflection of the street lamps above, gold and trembling every time a fresh raindrop broke the surface. She stepped around them out of habit rather than any real concern for her shoes, enjoying instead the small private game of finding a clean, dry path between them, weaving left and right along the pavement with the loose, unthinking ease of someone who had walked this same stretch of street 100 times before and no longer needed to look down to know where the ground dipped and rose. Very few people were out. A man hurried past under a black umbrella, his collar turned up, his eyes fixed somewhere just ahead of his own feet, clearly eager to be indoors. A cyclist passed slowly on the other side of the street, tires hissing softly against the wet asphalt, his rain jacket glowing faintly yellow in the dim evening light. A bus pulled away from a stop further down the block, its windows fogged and warmly lit, carrying its handful of passengers off towards some other corner of the city, its tires sending up a low, brief hiss of spray as it went. Otherwise, the street belonged entirely to Sophia and to the rain and to the soft, steady hush that settled over everything once the last hurried pedestrian had turned the corner and vanished. Warm warm, she passed the small grocer on the corner, its window glowing warm and yellow, crates of oranges and lemons still sitting out beneath the narrow awning, their skins gleaming wet under the shop light. The owner, an older man she recognized but had never learned the name of, was busy inside, stacking bread onto a shelf, and he glanced up briefly as she passed, offering a small, unhurried nod through the glass. She returned it with a quiet smile, and neither of them broke stride to say anything further. It was enough, somehow, that small, wordless acknowledgement between two people going about their separate evenings, a tiny thread of recognition passed between two lives that would otherwise never properly meet. Beyond the grocer, the street narrowed, the buildings pressing closer together, their upper windows glowing here and there with warm, private light. Sophia liked imagining briefly the small lives unfolding behind each lit window, a family finishing dinner, someone reading alone by a lamp, a couple laughing quietly over something on a screen. She never wondered too long about any single one. It was enough simply to notice that the whole street was full of small warmths, each one contained and complete, needing nothing from her, asking nothing of her, simply existing quietly behind glass while she walked past in the rain below. One window, higher up than the rest, showed the silhouette of someone practicing what looked like slow, careful stretches, arms rising and falling in an unhurried rhythm of their own. Another held the flicker of a television, its blue-grey light shifting softly against a ceiling Sophia would never see the rest of. She smiled faintly at both, at the sheer, ordinary variety of ways people found to fill their evenings, none of them needing to know that a stranger below had noticed, and in her own quiet way wished them well. The rain fell more heavily for a stretch, drumming loudly against a metal awning ahead of her, and Sophia paused beneath it for a moment, tipping her head back to watch the drops gather and fall in a steady curtain just beyond the edge of the metal. The sound was almost deafening this close, a rich, layered roar that swallowed every other noise on the street, and she found something deeply satisfying in standing directly beneath it, wrapped entirely in its noise, untouched by a single drop. It reminded her, briefly and pleasantly, of standing beneath a waterfall she had visited once on a childhood holiday, the same sense of being wrapped completely in sound, safe and dry within arm's reach of something so much larger and louder than herself. After a minute, she stepped back out from under the awning and continued on, the rain immediately softening back into its gentler rhythm, the roar sading behind her into the quieter, more familiar patter she had grown so fond of. Her socks had grown slightly damp inside her shoes, though she hardly minded. There was something almost pleasant about it, a small, harmless discomfort that made the evening feel more fully inhabited, more real than if she had stayed dry and comfortable behind her own window the whole time. She turned down a narrower side street, one she rarely took during the day, but often found herself drawn to on evenings like this. It ran along the back of a small park, separated from the street by a low iron fence, and through the bars she could see the shapes of trees standing dark and still in the rain, their branches heavy and dripping, a few scattered benches glistening faintly under a single working lamppost near the park centre. She slowed her pace here, in no particular hurry, watching the rain fall steadily through the beam of that one lamp, each drop catching the light for just a moment before disappearing into the darker grass beyond its reach. A pair of ducks moved slowly across the small pond at the park centre, barely visible now in the fading light, their quiet paddling the only motion in an otherwise still and rain-softened scene. Every so often, one of them tipped forward to dip its head beneath the surface, sending small ripples outward that caught the lamplight for just a moment before smoothing away again into the dark water. Further along the fence, a swing set stood empty near the park's edge, its chains dark with rain, swaying very slightly in some breeze too faint for Sophia to feel herself. She thought, watching it move on its own, of all the childhood evenings that must have once filled this small park with noise, laughter, the particular squeal of swings pushed too high, and how strange and peaceful it felt now, decades removed from any of that, to find the same space entirely given over to rain and quiet and two unhurried ducks. Sophia stopped at the low fence for a while, resting her forearms against the cool, wet iron, simply watching. She thought, without any particular urgency, about how easily an evening like this could feel sad if she let it, an unmarried woman walking alone through empty streets in the rain, no one waiting for her at home, no plans, no company. But it never quite felt that way to her. If anything, evenings like this felt like the fullest, most honestly hers of the whole week, unclaimed by anyone else's needs or expectations, entirely her own to shape however she liked. She had tried once or twice inviting friends along on these walks, and though the company had been pleasant enough, something about the walk itself had changed, become smaller somehow, filled with conversation where there had once been room for the rain to simply exist, undiluted, unremarked upon. She had come, slowly, to understand that some kinds of peace could only be found alone, not because other people diminished her, but because certain quiet rooms in her own mind only opened when there was no one else present to fill them with talk. She remembered, vaguely, a rainy evening years earlier, not so different from this one, when she had first noticed the shift, walking home from a gathering that had left her feeling strangely depleted despite everyone's kindness, despite the warmth of the evening itself. She had stepped outside afterward in a light drizzle and felt something in her chest loosen almost immediately, some quiet, private part of her uncurling the moment she was finally alone again with her own footsteps and the soft, undemanding sound of rain. It was not that the gathering had been unpleasant, it was simply that she had learned that evening, walking slowly home beneath a sky much like tonight's, that her own solitary company was not something to endure between better moments, but a good and complete thing in itself, deserving the same care and attention she gave to everything else she loved. She had carried that small private lesson with her ever since, returning to it quietly on evenings just like this one, whenever she needed reminding. A little later, a small delivery scooter puttered slowly past, its rider hunched forward against the rain, a stack of flat pizza boxes strapped carefully to the back, wrapped in plastic to keep them dry. Sophia watched its taillight shrink and blur into the wet distance, wondering briefly, and without any real need to know, which warm window ahead was waiting for it. A little further on, the street dipped down toward a narrow footbridge crossing the small stream that fed the park's pond, its water running higher and faster than usual, swollen pleasantly by the evening's rain. Sophia paused at its center, resting both hands on the damp wooden railing, and looked down at the water rushing beneath her, dark and quick, catching brief flashes of lamplight before disappearing again into shadow. The sound of it, rushing and constant, blended easily with the rain, two different kinds of water moving at two different speeds, and yet somehow perfectly suited to each other, the way certain sounds simply belonged together. She stood there longer than she meant to, watching a few stray leaves spin and vanish beneath the bridge, carried off towards some drain or culvert further downstream she would never see. There was something satisfying in watching them go, small, complete little journeys happening entirely without her, needing no witness, continuing on regardless of whether she stayed to watch or walked on. A single moth fluttered briefly into the glow of the nearest lamppost, circled twice, and vanished again into the dark, and Sophia found herself smiling at its small, private errand, whatever it might have been. She continued along the park's edge, the iron fence giving way eventually to a low stone wall, moss growing thick and soft along its top, glistening darkly with rain. Beyond it, the street curved gently to follow the park's boundary, leading her past a small church whose stained glass windows glowed faintly from some light left on deep inside, red and blue and gold shapes blurred gently by the rain streaking down the old glass. She paused there too, briefly looking up at the church's narrow spire, disappearing into the low grey clouds above, rain sheeting steadily off its old slate roof in thin silver ribbons. A bell somewhere inside chimed the hour softly, muffled by the rain and the thick stone walls, more felt than heard, a low vibration reaching her chest before it reached her ears. She counted the chimes out of old habit, though she already knew the hour well enough, simply enjoying the small ritual of counting, the way each low note seemed to hang a moment in the wet air before dissolving back into the steady patter of rain. A few doors past the church stood a small second-hand bookshop, its window softly lit despite the shop being closed, a single lamp left burning somewhere near the back, casting long, warm shadows across the stacks of books piled in loose, unhurried towers along the floor. Sophia paused here too, as she nearly always did, studying the handful of titles propped in the window display, their covers faded and slightly curled with age. A small handwritten sign leaned against one stack, its ink smudged faintly from old rain, reading simply, "Closed for the evening, open again tomorrow, whenever you happen to be passing." She smiled at that particular sign, as she always did, charmed by its quiet lack of urgency, its easy acceptance that some people would come and some wouldn't, and either way the shop would simply be there, patient and unbothered, whenever they finally did. She thought, standing there in the rain, that she rather liked living in a city that still had room for shops like this one, unhurried and slightly stubborn in their refusal to rush toward anyone. She lingered a moment longer, tracing the spines of the visible titles with her eyes, promising herself, as she often did, that she would stop in properly one of these days, though she suspected some part of her preferred it exactly as it was now, glimpsed only briefly through rain-streaked glass, its full contents left pleasantly unknown. Further along, the street opened onto a small square, mostly empty at this hour, its central fountain switched off for the season, water instead simply pooling in its wide stone basin, dark and still, except where fresh rain broke its surface in an endless shifting pattern of tiny rings. A single café at the square's edge still had its lights on, though only one table was occupied, two elderly men playing chess by the window, entirely absorbed in their game, oblivious to the rain, to the empty square, to Sophia passing quietly by outside. She smiled faintly at the sight, comforted somehow by the thought of those two men, together in their small, warm room, unaware of anyone watching, simply enjoying their evening, exactly as she was enjoying hers, in her own separate, quiet way. Different shapes of the same evening piece, she thought, unfolding all across the city at once, in kitchens and cafés and empty squares alike. Near the far edge of the square, beneath the deep awning of a shuttered pharmacy, a lone street musician had set up despite the weather, his guitar case open at his feet, though empty of coins at this late, rain-soaked hour. He played anyway, softly, some slow, wandering melody Sophia didn't recognize, his fingers moving unhurriedly over the strings, as though the music were as much for himself as for anyone who might happen to pass. She slowed as she crossed the square, letting the tune follow her for a while, its notes blending easily with the rain until distance folded it gently back into silence. She crossed the square slowly, her shoes tapping softly against the wet cobblestones, and continued down a street she knew would eventually loop her back toward home. The rain had settled now into its steadiest rhythm yet, no longer building or softening, simply falling, patient and constant, as though it had found exactly the pace it intended to keep for the rest of the night. Sophia's thoughts drifted, unhurried, the way they always did on these walks, touching lightly on small things and then releasing them just as easily. She thought of a conversation from earlier that week, already softened at its edges by Kime. She thought of a book waiting half-read on her nightstand, its bookmark somewhere near the middle, no urgency at all to finish it. She thought of a recipe she meant to try that weekend, of a plant on her windowsill that needed repotting, of a friend's birthday still a few weeks off. She thought of nothing in particular for long stretches at a time, simply existing inside the sound of her own footsteps and the rain, her mind as calm and unhurried as the empty street around her. She passed a small bakery, closed for the night but still faintly warm-smelling, the scent of that afternoon's bread somehow lingering in the damp air outside its shuttered window. She passed a laundrette, its fluorescent lights buzzing softly, empty of customers, rows of silent machines waiting patiently for morning. She passed a narrow alley where a cat watched her from beneath a parked car, eyes catching the streetlight briefly before it turned and disappeared further into the shadows. She passed a small tailor's shop, its window display featuring a single half-finished jacket pinned carefully to a mannequin, sleeves not yet attached, as though the tailor had simply stepped away mid-thought and would return any moment to finish the work. A row of spools stood lined along the sill behind it, every color imaginable, catching what little light spilled from the street lamp outside. She passed a shuttered flower stall, its metal shutter painted with a faded mural of sunflowers, colors softened and blurred now by years of weather. She passed a narrow set of stone steps, leading up toward a terrace she had never once climbed, though she always meant to, someday on a clearer evening than this one. Every small scene felt complete in itself, needing nothing added, needing no company beyond her own quiet attention. She had come to think of these walks as a kind of collecting, gathering small, ordinary moments the way some people collected stones or postcards, not to keep exactly, but simply to notice, to let pass through her attention and settle briefly before moving on. The rain had soaked fully through the shoulders of her coat by the time she turned onto her own street again, the familiar plane trees reappearing ahead of her, their broad leaves still dripping steadily in the lamplight. She did not mind the damp weight of her coat, nor the cool dampness that had creeped slowly into her shoes. Her body felt pleasantly tired now, the good kind of tired that came from movement rather than stress. Her mind settled and quiet in a way it rarely was during the busier hours of daylight. She let herself into the small entryway of her building, shaking the rain gently from her coat before starting up the narrow staircase to her flat. The stairwell smelled faintly of old wood and rain, familiar and comforting, and she climbed slowly, in no hurry now that her walk had reached its natural end, listening to her own footsteps echo softly against the walls. A neighbor's radio played faintly behind one closed door as she passed, some low murmur of voices and music she couldn't quite make out, gone again the moment she reached the next landing. Inside her flat, the quiet felt different from the quiet outside, warmer, more contained. She hung her wet coat on a hook by the door, peeled off her damp socks, and padded barefoot across the wooden floor to draw the curtains half closed, leaving just enough of a gap to still hear the rain continuing steadily against her window. She lit a single candle on the small shelf by the armchair, more from habit than need, enjoying the way its light softened the room's edges, mixing gently with the pale glow already drifting in from the street lamp outside, the whole small room settling slowly into exactly the kind of warm, unhurried stillness she had been walking toward the entire evening without quite realizing it. She made herself a small cup of tea, moving unhurriedly through her familiar kitchen, and carried it to the armchair by the window, wrapping her hands around its warmth, exactly the way she always did after a long walk in the rain. She did not turn on the main light, content instead with the single soft lamp by her chair, its glow low and golden, matching the mood of the evening perfectly. She sat for a while, simply listening, her damp hair slowly drying against the back of the chair, the rain outside continuing its steady, patient rhythm against the glass. She thought, sipping her tea slowly, that she could not fully explain to anyone who asked why these solitary walks meant so much to her, only that they left her feeling each time quietly restored, as though some small, essential part of her had been gently topped up simply by moving alone through the rain for an hour, needing nothing, expecting nothing, simply present in her own quiet company. She thought back over the walk itself as she sat there, letting the small scenes return to her one by one, unhurried, the way pleasant memories often did once given room to surface. The grocer's quiet nod through the glass, the roar of rain beneath the metal awning, the ducks moving slowly across the darkened pond, the empty swing swaying faintly on its own, the two old men bent over their chessboard, the street musician's soft, wandering tune, the second-hand bookshop's small, patient sign. None of it had asked anything of her, and all of it, gathered together now in her tired, contented mind, felt like a quiet kind of company in itself, proof that an evening spent alone could still be full, could still be rich with small, ordinary wonders simply for the noticing. Outside, the rain continued to fall over the whole sleeping street, over the small grocery now closed for the night, over the empty square where the two old men had likely finished their game and gone home, over the quiet park where the ducks had settled somewhere out of sight for the night, over every rooftop and window she had passed on her long, unhurried walk. It fell over the second-hand bookshop's small handwritten sign, still leaning patiently in the window, waiting for whoever might happen to pass tomorrow. It fell over the footbridge, the stream beneath it still running high and quick, carrying its small cargo of leaves onward through the dark, toward wherever such things eventually went. Sophia finished her tea slowly, rinsed the cup, and made her way toward bed, her body loose and pleasantly heavy with the particular tiredness that only comes after time spent entirely, comfortably alone. She changed into soft pajamas, slipped beneath her quilt, and lay for a while listening to the rain, her thoughts settling gently, one by one, into the same unhurried quiet that had carried her the whole length of her walk. She thought about tomorrow only briefly and without any real urgency. A few small tasks waiting, a friend to call back, nothing that couldn't wait a little longer if it needed to. Mostly, her mind stayed here, in the soft, rain-filled present, replaying small fragments of the evening without effort, the way a mind does when it has nowhere else it needs to be, content to simply drift from one warm, half-formed thought to the next, without needing to follow any of them very far. She thought, drifting slowly towards sleep, that solitude, chosen freely and without any need to defend it, was its own kind of quiet company, steady and undemanding, always willing to walk beside her through the rain and ask for nothing at all in return. It had taken her years to learn that lesson properly, to stop mistaking a quiet evening alone for an empty one, but she was glad now to have finally arrived at it, glad to carry it with her on evenings exactly like this one. Her breathing slowed, matching the soft, endless rhythm of the rain outside, and somewhere in that gentle, overlapping rhythm, between one breath and the next, she slipped quietly into sleep, the rain still falling steadily beyond her window, patient and unhurried, keeping its own quiet company with the whole sleeping street long after she had stopped listening.